Okay, here we go. Little technical error at the beginning. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, lovely people. This is Marie Alessi with the wonderful Jeffrey Johnston. I am so happy to have you back, Jeffrey, because it's been quite some time since you and I connected here in a beautiful virtual world. And I was really looking forward to sharing what's been going on over the past couple of years. In a nutshell, you and I connected years ago on LinkedIn, and we established a really beautiful connection and, may I say, friendship over the years. I had you on Up Spiral Grief, which was the previous name of my podcast, three times, and we are not going to share that in detail. We will wrap this up for our new listeners.
Yeah.
And I will also be sharing the links to the interviews for those who would like to watch it in the show notes. But without further ado, would you do us the honor and please introduce yourself to our audience? Welcome.
Hey, Marie, it's awesome to be on Unsilence Grief. It's a great title because grief is something that kind of gets pushed away and hidden in the shadows and not talked about. And, for your listeners and followers, I'm in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. So I'm in the States and it's we have like a, 8-9 hour time zone difference. But I'm about 4 hours west of Chicago, just to give people an idea where Iowa is. And we're known for corn and cows and beautiful this time of year. Absolutely beautiful. But yeah, I'm just so excited to be back and kind of have a conversation, but maybe dive into some new, fresh topics that we hadn't talked about. But we'll have to talk about why I do what I do. And I had you on my podcast, so I got to learn about your passion and your background and your why. And there's one thing I've learned in this whole space, Marie, is that all of our stories are different and unique to us, but we all have a story.
Yeah, absolutely. And so much has changed in both of our lives. Both of us have gone in slightly new directions, still really pursuing our passion. But give us a bit of a background story, if you don't mind doing that in a nutshell. What actually brought you into this space of grief, and then we will talk about mental health and the space that you're working in now and what you're doing for it. So there's quite a few steps. I'll let you guide the way there.
Yeah. So I have a quote that I aspire to, and it's like my personal mission statement. So it's something it's like my marching orders. It's on the back of our t-shirts and mugs and stuff, but it goes like this: purpose becomes passion when it gets personal. So again, purpose becomes passion when it gets personal. So think about that phrase for a minute as I kind of tell you the beginning of the story. And I won't give you the long version, obviously, because some of your people have already heard this a few times, but essentially, I'm 58 this year. So 8 years ago, I would have been 50, happily married. My wife, Prudence, 21 years, 3 boys, Seth, Ian, and Roman. I was running an investment firm I started when I was 23. Life's going really good, like a lot of your followers, a lot of your listeners. And just kind of pat myself on the back. I kind of like, Marie, I started at 23, fresh out of college, selling investments and life insurance. And, we didn't have the internet back then. Cell phones were this big in my car. And so I had to go knock on doors. I had to sell life insurance door to door. And that was hard.
Wow.
It was very hard.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything that kids do today because all their selling is done like this. It's, e-commerce type stuff versus we had to shake hands and convince people to buy stuff that was hard to imagine. But anyway, so things going good. And then all of a sudden, like life does, it comes in pretty much guaranteed. The long enough you live, you're going to have some really unfortunate things happen. And on that particular day, October 4th, 2016, I died, but I was reborn on that same day. And I kind of like to use this when I talk about grief and suffering and trauma, is that things don't have to be an ending.
Yeah.
It can be a beginning. And I didn't realize that now until I looked back and I kind of reverse engineered and dissected my life. It's like, sure, we all write a book. We all have chapters and stories we write all the way. And sometimes a chapter ends, but a lot of times it just continues the same flow. And that's kind of how life is. And in my case, our oldest son, Seth, who was 23 at the time, was found deceased in a hotel room not far from where I live, from heroin with fentanyl. So basically fentanyl killed him. And I
Yeah.
had never heard of fentanyl. I couldn't spell it. I didn't know what it was. Heroin, I
Yeah.
was familiar with. I'd never done drugs my whole life, but everyone knew what heroin was. Anyway,
Mm.
Seth died, and that was like my first really step into this new life that I have. And I instantly do what everyone would do. I pulled back. I was in shock. I told my business
Mm.
partner I need a year off,
Yeah.
because I needed to work on myself.
Mm.
And in that year off, I started writing my book. I started my podcast called Living Undeterred because COVID
Mm.
was coming in that point.
Yeah.
Um, and it was about 3 years after Seth's death when COVID
Mm.
came. And I was at home and I'm thinking, okay, I like to be creative. I like to talk about these things that happened to me. And so I started doing the podcast, and that's where I met you and went really well.
Mm.
But I was really struggling. And that 14 months I stayed home from work, I got drunk every single day for 14
Yeah.
straight months. And what your followers and listeners don't know is preceding Seth's death, I'd been an alcoholic since probably age
Mm.
17, so 30 something years.
Yeah.
But I was what was called a functional alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
So I could like be drunk right now and you probably couldn't tell.
Yeah.
But I couldn't drive a car. I never drank during the day or at work. It was always like 5 o'clock at night, have a
Yeah.
couple beers with the buddies or whatever. And then I would drink a bottle of wine or something with my wife. And
Mm.
like most things, Marie, they aren't a problem until they become what? A problem.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
what happened. And
Yeah.
so that's the first like part. And then I can answer questions for you, or we can talk a little bit. And then I'll talk about
Yeah.
the second death I had and then how I was
Yeah.
reborn and where I'm
Yeah.
at today.
I think it's just incredible because I know your whole background story. I knew about, that you were a functioning alcoholic and your
Hmm.
whole path through that. Yet every time you hear that, and especially when we only have like half an hour today, and then you need to,
Hmm.
wrap this up so people can actually follow your story. Um, it still really touches me so deeply because we learn when we are on podcasts, when we're on interviews, we learn in the work that we both do to wrap up our story.
Mm.
And then when you hear it back, there is always this wow, there's this moment of how far you've come and how on earth did you do that? Because I know the answer to that, but I would really love for you to
Hmm.
share that. How do you just decide that you're going to stop drinking and get your
Mm.
life in order because of such a huge event that happened in your life? When your son passed.
Hmm.
Yeah, can you share a little bit about that? Because I
Yeah.
know we don't have all the time in the world, but I really would love to hear that.
Yeah. So, 14 months into Seth's death, I'm drinking now every day. My wife is
Mm.
drinking as well heavily. So we both were hardcore alcoholics at that point. I was up to almost
Yeah.
200 pounds, like 192 pounds. And I just looked in the mirror December, Christmas Eve of 2017. I said, what are you doing?
Mm.
You know, what are you doing, Jeff? I mean, who are
Yeah.
you? This is not, the mirror wasn't telling the real story, or maybe it was telling the real story now that I think
Yeah.
about it. I was
Mm.
in, just a wreck. And I
Mm.
just decided that day I'd stop. So I quit and I haven't drank since. And, for
Mm.
me, it's been not very difficult to do, but
Yeah.
I don't reward myself because I don't count my days, and I don't punish myself if I had a drink. I
Mm.
would just
Yeah.
be pretty pragmatic about that. But where I'm going with this is I thought that was going to help my wife.
Yeah.
And the reason I did actually quit was I saw my 9-year younger wife look 9 years older than me, like in
Mm.
over 4 years. I could just,
Yeah.
she was really aging quickly and just
Yeah.
lost a lot of weight and got shakes. And I just like, dude, I already lost Seth. I can't lose my
Yeah.
wife. So I quit.
Yeah.
And I realized it was easy for me to not drink. And then, as you will know too well, June 29th of 21, so just 3 years ago, my wife died from alcoholism. But we all know she died from grief of losing Seth.
Yeah.
But alcohol was her way she dealt with grief,
Yeah.
and it took her life. And so here I am now, 58, and half my family's gone. However, I really think I've learned through a lot of work and a lot of meeting people like you to get myself in a place where I'm better and not bitter.
Mm.
Not leading with anger and hatred and blaming things like the drugs or the drug dealer.
Yeah.
My son made a choice. I mean,
Yeah.
anytime you're taking any drug that's illegal, fentanyl or not fentanyl, you always have a
Yeah.
chance of a bad experience. And sometimes
Yeah.
that can be death. And so I just stopped blaming. I just stopped blaming and started thinking, how
This,
can I change my life to help people?
yeah, this is exactly what I love so much about you, Jeff, that the non-blaming, you look at
Hmm.
the facts and you know how unfortunate they are, and this is just sugarcoating what the actual experience really felt like,
Hmm.
the depth of grief. You've walked through that valley not once but twice, and yet you're sitting here in non-blame mode, in
Hmm.
solution mode, in creative mode, in how can we do something about this? How can we stop
Hmm.
this? How can we turn this huge ship around and, talk about mental health a little bit more? And that's
Hmm.
exactly what we want to focus on today. So thank you
Hmm.
so much for sharing the background story to this. And before we, well, it's actually already on the way, not before we, but on the way to talking
Hmm.
about mental health, tell us about how did you come up with this idea of the tour? We're also going to do that in a
Yeah.
nutshell because we will be sharing all these interviews
Yeah.
in the show notes. But give us a nutshell for the new listeners. You went on this massive tour around the
Yeah.
States. That's when I sort
I,
of got to know you.
I don't even know really where the idea came in. I just knew that I'm a restless person kind of by nature. And
Yeah,
so doing another hour on a podcast or writing another book or
yeah,
just sitting here in my computer, I just felt like I need to go see the people. I need to go out. I'm not a
hmm,
politician. I'm not going to go knock on
yeah,
doors. So I
yeah.
just went and bought a big RV and got it fully wrapped
I
with the
just, I
intention.
just
Yeah.
went and bought an RV as
I
you do.
know. I took a bunch of books and I went up to
Yeah.
Camping World up here and I just said, I want to get an RV and go around the country and I'll promote you
Mm,
guys. And so they knocked some price off. But anyway, I
yeah.
wrapped it. It said Living Undeterred US Tour in black and
Mm,
yellow. And my
mm,
dream was I would drive around the United States, which we did 20,000 miles, 95
mm.
days in the summer of 2022. That's what that
Wow.
map is back there.
Yeah.
Almost killed me numerous times. But my intention was I'm going to go out and bring this issue to the face of people
Yeah.
with the hopes, Marie, that some billionaire or some CEO or some big sports star or somebody saw this RV, Googled it, and
Yeah.
said, I want to talk to this guy. I want to support him.
Yeah.
I want to help him out.
Yeah.
I didn't get one call like that.
Yeah.
20,000 miles around the United States with this big billboard, 34 feet
Yeah.
long. I got donations. I think we raised like 35 or 40,000, but I wanted to raise 1 million.
Mm,
So
yeah.
for me, it was a personal financial disaster, but
Yeah.
I planted so many seeds around the country showing people that I'm that guy that you need to believe in because I'm the foot
Yeah.
soldier. That was I'm
Hmm.
telling myself this as I'm
Yeah.
thinking, what are you doing, you idiot? What are you doing?
Mm,
No one's buying this. You've got
mm,
this crazy idea. And I just kept doing it because I didn't really have a backup plan.
yeah.
It ended. And then I thought, well, what am I going to do next?
Mm,
And so this idea of this app popped in my head. It's like
yeah.
meeting kids where they're at.
Yeah.
95% of all Gen Zers in the world, it's
Yeah.
2.56 billion humans, have access or own a cell phone. So
Mm,
I want to get to the kids. The easiest way to do it's going to be through their phone. But then that's a whole different set of challenges that I did
yeah.
not know anything about. And I was very
Yeah.
unprepared for.
Before we go there, one last question because I really want to talk about the app, which I'm
Mhm.
really, yeah, I really, really love what you've done there. I want to say one thing because I know, because we've talked about it before, that you set out with the aim of raising $1 million and
Mhm.
you raised 30 to 35,000. And I can
Yep.
understand so well how frustrating that might have felt.
Yeah.
Yet there is the business perspective and obviously, personal financial loss that you talked about.
Mhm.
But there is also that how many kids or young adults did you meet
Yeah.
who you may have saved along the way? There
Yeah.
are countless stories that I know that you shared where I was really touched by, and the
Yeah.
seeds that you planted, as you say now. And probably out of that may have also come the idea. So I always know nothing's for nothing. Nothing happens for
Oh yeah.
nothing. And I know that you're on the same page. So let's talk about that app. How did that come about? How did you come up with that idea? And then really put all your efforts into that because what came out of that is phenomenal. So please share about Brighton
Yeah.
and how the name came about.
I'll talk about the app, but I just want to wrap up that
Yeah,
quick observation about the tour. But one
absolutely.
thing that I really learned about the tour was the moment I decided to take my ego and just set it
Mm,
aside and not think about the money, not think about all the things that I thought were the real reasons why I wanted to do this, raise the money.
Yeah.
And I made that pivot. It changed my whole life the minute my
Mm.
ego really got quieted. And someday I can
Yeah.
talk to people about that. But I do have a pretty strict routine I stick to about 5 days a week, and I can share that as well. But yeah, so the app kind of came to mind. And what happened was I looked at the mental wellness, mental health space for kids. So in America,
Mm.
or I don't know, it's probably the same in Australia, I would assume. But Gen Z is a generation where the age is approximately 14 to 26, roughly.
Yeah.
So, that's a big range of disparity there. 14's really young, and
Yeah.
26, you could be done with college. So, how do you make an app that
Yeah.
can cater to the intellect, the desires, the hopes, and the
Yeah.
dreams of those age brackets? So, we obviously had our work cut out for us. But what I decided to do, Marie, is look at what already's out there. And there's
Mm.
20,000 mental health apps on the planet. There's a
Wow.
lot. Yeah.
Mm.
And a lot of them are just one faceted, like a meditation app that counts as
Yeah.
mental health, or
Yeah.
a gym app, or a
Mm.
calorie counting app, or
Yeah. Wow. That
weightlifting
counts as
app.
mental health as well. Calorie
Oh yeah,
counting apps.
anything with
That's
your health
interesting.
is counted kind of as mental
Okay.
health. And
Mm.
so I decided, well, I'm an investment guy. I manage money for people. Let me maybe go to that industry and see if I could find some common ground between financial planning and youth mental health. I'm like,
Mm.
geez, what would that be?
Yeah.
Well, I just started role playing. If you're a new client, you come in my office, what are the
Mm.
steps I do? And
Yeah.
ultimately, I would recommend to you to invest your money in a portfolio of investments. So we didn't put all of our money in one thing,
Yeah.
right? It's called diversification.
Yeah.
It's what we do in investments. Well, I looked at the mental health space for kids, and I'm like, I don't see diversification. What I
Mm.
see is mom and dad waiting for a forest fire, and they come running in with a thimble full of water, and they dump
Mm.
it on the forest fire. And then they go
Yeah.
get more water. And then as that forest fire kind of dwindles, another forest fire grows.
Yeah.
And I just saw this big game of whack-a-mole developing in front of my eyes. And
Hmm.
I thought
Yeah.
the industry needs that financial planning mentality. So I introduced the idea of empowered mental wellness planning to kids. And
I
we
love
focus
that.
on three asset classes: are health, wealth, and purpose. So instead of stocks,
Yeah.
bonds, and real estate for your money,
Hmm.
ours are health, wealth, and purpose. And I believe what we've built and the evidence we're seeing coming through, the combination of those three areas of optimal mental wellness, if kids can, and here's the key, if they can see this as a way they can self-assess, so they can self-regulate, not mom and dad telling them don't do drugs,
Mm.
or me coming to
Yeah.
school say don't do drugs. That's not
Yeah.
that's not self-regulating. And then they
Yeah.
can autonomously build. So in their own terms, their own time frame. I think if we can get kids, and we call them thrivers on our app, to market
Mm.
our app to kids, so peer to peer,
Yeah.
I think that's a fresh new approach to this industry. We don't have like a lot of evidence yet that this is going to work, but
Mm.
I really do think that the combination of these three things, based on what I saw preceding this, I think is our contribution. It's not the solution. It's a
Yeah.
solution. And it's
Yeah.
my contribution to this problem. And then the name, as you know, when Seth died, 3 weeks after he died, his daughter was born. So I have this angelic, beautiful, wonderful 7.5-year-old granddaughter,
Mm.
and her name is Brightn. So, and I always say, brighten my day, brighten your life, brighten your
Mm.
mind. And now Brighton's aware of the app. So she always like, how's my Brightn app going, Grandpa?
I love it.
Yeah. And it's like,
It's
you
so good.
know, I just sit there and I think, yeah, I've lost half my family, but man,
Mm.
what I've gained from those
Yeah.
losses. And I think that's the story of grief. That's what you're trying to do is I'm not gonna let the inevitability of death. We're all gonna die.
Yeah.
Why am I'm shocked in the order of the death in my life. I'm not
Yeah.
shocked in the death itself. Kids
I
shouldn't
hear
die
you.
first. Your wife shouldn't die before you. And you're
Mm.
and my dad is 92, and he's the only
Yeah.
one still around. It's like he
And
probably
I'm
should have been
so
the
happy
first
to
one.
hear that because I know there
Yeah.
were health issues as well while you were on tour.
Yeah,
So
he almost
it's
died
so
2 years ago.
so beautiful to hear that he's still around and to
Yeah.
witness all of
So
that beauty
so
that
your
you.
people, yeah, your people listening to this, I think the lesson in my story isn't to compare your story to mine, because that's just not productive.
Yeah.
Grief comparison and is no different
Yeah.
than comparing somebody's successes. But
Yeah.
how did Jeff respond and get himself in a place that looks like he's really got his stuff together? And I struggle every day. I mean, 2 years ago, I had a gun to my head. So I'll share that with your listeners. I mean, I know I'm in this fight every day the rest of my life. And I'm a high competitive person. And I know death's going to win eventually. It's going to get me. But I'm going to go down fighting. I'm going to go down swinging. And death's going to have a hard time finding me. And I believe
I
that.
prefer to say it's gonna run its natural course. I don't see it as death wins, but yeah.
Well, I know I'm not going to win. So,
yeah.
And that brings up things about the afterlife and all that stuff we've talked about. And it's like, I really want to believe that someday I'll see them again, but in the chance that there isn't an afterlife, I'm seeing them right now.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to die to see him again.
Yeah.
That sounds a waste of time to me. So I see him right now. So it's like, if there is an afterlife and I see him, then I win both ways. I can see him now and I see him when I'm gone.
Yeah.
Do I cry? Oh my God. Every day. I mean, probably 5 times today I've cried, and I'll cry again tonight. Yeah. I'm a very emotional person, and I used to hide it. And I think for men listening to this, man, let it out. Just let it out. And I think there's some humility when you cry in front of somebody you don't know, a stranger. I think it just makes you feel like, man, I can really show my emotions. And I think other men, young men, can see me cry and they're like, this is Mr. Living Undeterred. He's not supposed to cry. I'm like, I cry all the time, and I don't fight it anymore.
Yeah.
I don't fight it.
It's beautiful that you share that, because I think, especially here in Australia, I noticed that I've literally just celebrated my 20 years in Australia, and I remember when I first got
Great.
here, like there are such blokey blokes, we have to show like cave time, and I'm the strong one, and I don't hold hands with my woman on the street because it could be seen as unmanly, and I'm like, oh my goodness, where have I landed? I still remember seeing that, thinking, this is cave time for me. I really felt it was a step backwards in terms of, where we were in Europe at that time.
Is it getting better?
Certainly, I just wanted to say, it's certainly changed over the years, over
Good.
the last 20 years. So men have recognized that it is okay to kiss their women in public, or to show affection in public, or to let alone speak about emotions. And this is where we're right in the topic, like in the topic of mental health. There is so much put the lid on, and it turns into a pressure cooker. And this is exactly those little but huge things that I want to see changing. That and not just men, people in general, young people in general. Like, I have 2 sons; they're 14 and 16. They know that it's okay to talk about emotions. Like the other day, and I'm not going to go into detail for privacy reasons, but I had one of my son's best friends sit over, and we all of a sudden got into this topic of speaking openly about suicide. And we sat there for an hour, and I felt it was such a sacred moment for me to be sitting there and invited into their world, which is rare,
That's
because
beautiful.
there are topics that young adults don't talk about with their parents or in front of their parents. And I watched my sons talk about their dad's death, and I watched one of their best friends talk about suicide really openly. And it was beautiful to be able to listen, to hold space, to share experiences. And all of us were equal in that. There was no, I'm the parent and you're here, and we were all equal in that conversation. It was so beautiful. And my son's friend actually thanked me the next day, saying, thank you so much for last night. And I was just blown away. It was a really, this unfortunately doesn't happen enough, but I was so grateful that it did happen. It happened in my house. It was not forced at all. It just happened naturally. And we sat there for a good hour, just sharing stories, all of us. And it was so equal. And that's what I loved about it. And I feel that this is what we need to foster and encourage a lot more. Having conversations, sharing from the heart, without any judgment, without sometimes even without having the solutions right there, just to sit and listen to their stories. And that to me was such a gift, absolute sacred moment.
I think sometimes there's an expectation, and it's a false expectation, that there are solutions. A lot
Yeah.
of times it's just an evolution. It's just a process.
Mm.
It's just, I mean, we all know,
Yeah.
everybody that's, over 20 knows that you're just one phone call away from some pretty bad news. And as you get older, you put your cats down, grandma dies, and it's like you kind of get slowly acclimated to these things. But now when you're like my age,
Mm.
why does it shock me when I get a call that somebody dies?
Mm.
I know it's coming, and I know not just death, but accidents and cancers and things like that. It's like
Yeah.
we know in advance that our time is limited, and good luck is, everything has a flip side. But I
Mm.
think this ability to be in the moment like you were is a great observation. I was that
Yeah.
way today. I was working on some stuff, and my new cat, I call him Shanks after my golf game,
I love
and he
it.
came.
I saw
Yeah,
that and I
he's
had
a
to laugh.
rescue.
I love it.
And
It's such a cool
he
name.
came and sat in my
It's
lap, and I'm
so
like in the
cute.
middle of this project. And normally my coffee was there, and he just jumped up, and he's only been with us 2 weeks, and
Yeah.
he doesn't do this a lot, but he
Mm.
kind of laid his head on my heart, and I
Oh.
just shut my computer, set my
Oh.
coffee down. I'm like,
Oh,
man,
beautiful.
this is a moment I wouldn't have appreciated. I
Mm.
wouldn't have appreciated it
Yeah.
unless I had all this chaos in my life. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I love my cat. He loves me, and there's this bond there. And I'm like,
Yeah.
he's laying his head on my heart. And it's like the lesson in that, Marie, is that I never would have noticed that beautiful moment that was in front of me. And I think with kids today, they're so focused on all the negative stuff that when
Mm.
great moments like that come up, they
Yeah.
don't see them. They
Yeah.
just miss them. And so one of our
Yeah.
things with our app is to make sure kids are very grateful. They journal, they track their
Mm.
moods. And then when these special moments like a cat sits in your lap, just enjoy the fact that this animal trusts you like that.
Mm.
How beautiful that is. There's something majestic about that. And I
Yeah.
never was that guy. I would have just taken the cat, set him down, and gone on my task. I had a deadline and I was trying to finish
Mm.
something, but I shut my computer.
Mm.
So I learned, and that's what I'm trying to tell people. You're never too old to learn.
Yeah.
And you're just seconds away from a call that can change your life. So when you get that
Mm.
call, and you will if you live long enough, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
That's the question everyone has to ask themselves. What are you going to do
Yeah.
about it? Be a victim, or
Yeah.
change your mindset to be more of a victor mindset?
Yeah. I love what you just said about the close your laptop, be
Hmm.
in the moment. I think we often say like there are no solutions, and there if there was the one solution for mental health, we'd all be using it, and
Oh yeah.
nobody would kill themselves anymore, and there would not be
Right.
suicide, etc. Yet I often feel that these solutions, and I do want to call them solutions, um, are exactly there in the moment. To
Hmm.
just be present, to be in the
Hmm.
moment, to close your computer. And I'm talking not just when your cat comes along, which is so beautiful, but when your kids
Yeah.
walk into the room. I made
Yeah.
it,
Big
oh, that's my
time.
thyroid
Big time.
medication.
Shut that football
I
game
made it,
off. Don't put it on
ex-
mute. Shut it off.
yeah,
That shows your kids that you care.
yeah, exactly that. That when they walk into the room, I made a point of it. If it's just a quick side note, maybe not because I would constantly be closing my computer. But
Yeah.
if they come in and connect, if they come in and talk to me, I make a point of putting my phone down, closing my laptop down. I just want to be those moments where they're really here and present and talking to me. I know that they're getting rarer and rarer. My boys are 14 and 16 now. Like
Yeah.
I feel I always say they spend more cave time or um, when they go to their rooms or time with their
Yeah.
friends, then they spend it with me. And I understand that because that's the age where we're at.
Hmm.
However, when they are with me, I make a point of being with them. And last night we watched a game, State of Origin, and we won. Woohoo! First time in 19 years. So that was incredible. And it was such a beautiful
Awesome.
night because that is,
Yeah.
it's family tradition for us. And anyway, I won't go into detail. For me, what I would like to wrap it up here with is the be present, close that laptop
Yeah.
and just open up those conversations, hold space for that. You don't have to have an answer for everything. Just listen to the conversation. I don't have an answer for suicide, but I listened to the conversation and it was absolutely beautiful. And who knows what seed that planted that night. It
Mm.
was such a incredible moment. And I would like to invite you to wrap up tonight
Yeah.
and my today. What is
I
the one thing that you would like to leave our listeners with here?
I would say this, and it popped in my head. And actually, I wrote about it in my book, but I forget to talk about it a lot. But
Yeah.
I would say you're always free to tell yourself a new story about your
Mm,
past. The word trauma and grief and suffering,
mm,
you don't have to identify with those words.
mm.
Grief can
Yeah.
just be extended period of sadness. Um,
Mm,
Depression can just be an extended period of sadness. Trauma can be an opportunity to become better. So I think as your listeners and followers sit there and they think of these labels that a doctor or some, I don't believe in those terms. I've
yeah.
not allowed myself to accept words like depression and grief and sorrow in my
Mm,
mind. I know I have them.
yeah.
But I'm not obligated to believe that narrative. And I think
Yeah.
that ability to kind of reframe things has been my superpower. If I have one,
Yeah.
that's what it is.
Same.
I studied Stoicism in college, so that's probably where I learned it from was
Hmm.
Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus and
Yeah.
Seneca,
Yeah.
great Stoics, and some of the
Mm.
simple things that worked thousands of years ago. We don't need AI and all this stuff to fix us. I think sometimes it's just simple, free things like just reframing. That's a
Mm.
powerful message for people. You're always free to tell yourself a new story about your past.
I love this. I love this so much. This is the perfect sentence to wrap up our conversation here today. You are always free to tell yourself a new story. Jeff, thank you so much for being here again. And as I said, we'll be sharing all the links in the show notes and also how you can actually find out more about the app Brightn. Please check it out. Please suggest it to your kids, and maybe we can start this. Kids suggesting it to kids. I really love this. I think this is the most beautiful way to share about this app.
Well, thanks
So
for what
much
you're
love to
doing
you
and your
all the
inspiration,
way.
and love to you as well.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you so much for being here. Everybody, if you love what you hear today, please share this. Please share this with anyone who needs to hear about it. And while you're there, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, click the notification bell so you won't ever miss an episode of Unsilence Grief again. This is Jeff and Marie signing off.